Viewers, remember the UN Resolution 1368 adopted in 2001? Let me remind you that this was the resolution that the UN adopted unanimously while condemning the 9/11 terror attack on United States of America. In fact, the Council members departed from the tradition and expressed the Council's readiness to take all necessary steps to respond to the attacks of September 11 and to combat all forms of terror in accordance with its charter responsibilities. In a related provision, the Council called on all states to work together urgently to bring to justice the perpetrators, organizers and sponsors of those terrorist attacks, and stressed that those responsible for aiding, supporting or harboring terror would be held accountable. Listen to what was said then.
There can be no doubt that these attacks are deliberate acts of terrorism, carefully planned and coordinated, and as such, I condemn them utterly. Terrorism must be fought resolutely wherever it appears. In such moments, cool and reasoned judgment are more essential than ever. We do not know yet who is behind these acts or what objective they hope to achieve. What we do know is that no just cause can be advanced by terror.
But viewers, this was year 2001 and UN stance on terror, it seems, has changed in 2023. Because what else explains the remark of UN chief who put the onus of Hamas's butchery and terror on Israel by saying that the Hamas attack on October 7th did not happen in vacuum? Hear it to believe it.
It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing. But the grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas, and those appalling attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people.
Riled by this comment from the UN chief, Israel played out proof of Hamas's butchery, a phone call in which Hamas terrorist admits to unleashing pure evil. He tells his mother how he massacred 10 Jews.
I would like to listen to this recording.
طبعا قاعد اكلمك من جوا بسيم افتح الواتس تبعه كل وين شوف كيف قتله شوف كيف قتلت بيدي يا رب قتل يهود هاي دخلوا في الدين يابا ربنا يحميك يا رب ربنا يحميك يا رب قاعد اكلمك من جوال يهوديه قتلته قتلت جوزها.
This is a terrorist of Hamas. What he said in there in Arabs, he telling to his mother and fathers that he is proud that he has blood of 10 Jewish that he murdered.
And let's now open this up. Sushant Sareen, senior fellow at the ORF, Daniel Kamen, former Israeli ambassador to India, and Issa Amro completes the panel, Palestinian activist. Gentlemen, good evening. Mr. Kamen, let me begin by asking you, were you shocked, and how shocked were you when you heard these comments by the UN chief?
I was shocked totally, and if you look at the tweets that I sent last night, you will see how shocked I was. I'm a person who still believes, despite the ill treatment of the United Nations of my country, I still believe in this organization. I don't know why, but I still do believe. I was shocked and I was disappointed. I was really disappointed because the chief of the United Nations, the Secretary-General, should express the feeling of the Secretariat and of the member states, but more than anything else, when he reports to the Security Council, which is the most important body of the United Nations, he should not take sides. The United Nations has a role of being even-handed. He can report on facts, but he cannot interpret as he did. and he said a very, very problematic sentence that you quoted.
Before I bring in Sushant Sareen, Mr. Amro, if one were to ask you, as a matter of principle, I am sure you would condemn terror unequivocally. And on October 7th, what happened to innocent Israelis was terror, pure terror.
Yes, please. I disagree 100% with you, starting with your interview and your program by comparing what happened in October 7th with what happened on 9/11. For sure, we denounce violence. We are 100% against targeting civilians, but you should start from 1948 and from 1967 and from the first Intifada and the second Intifada and give a historical context about what's going on the Palestinian occupied territories. Everybody, and India describes that it's occupied territories. India, historically supported the right of Palestinians for self-determination and for, ending the Israeli occupation. But unfortunately, you are trying to show that Palestinians' problem started in October 7th. Me personally, I am against any type of violence, but let's ask this question. Who are the people who are living in Gaza? From where they came? 80% of the people who are living in Gaza now, they are refugees from 1948.
Mr. Amro, I don't think you heard me correctly. I haven't even spoken about Palestinians. I'm talking about Hamas. Are you equating the two?
No. Palestinians are now the people who are suffering. Around 6,800 Palestinians are killed in Gaza now. More than 100 Palestinians were killed in West Bank. Israel since 1948 is imposing the system of apartheid. It's from the river to the sea, an apartheid state. And it's not my opinion. It's the opinion of B'Tselem, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, so all the Israeli and Palestinian and international human rights organizations. They describe it that it's apartheid. They describe it that it's occupation. They describe Israel as a country which is really violating the international law, violating the UN resolutions, not implemented on Israel, hundreds of UN resolutions, 242, 194. So as a Palestinian, I'm really looking and seeking peace, and I want to live with Israelis side by side. But me personally, Isa, I'm a human rights defender. I was attacked, beaten by Israeli soldiers and Israeli settlers.
Mr. Amro, Mr. Amro, you are only echoing what the UN chief said when he said that the Hamas's attack did not happen in vacuum. I'll get Mr. Kamal to respond. Of course. You are justifying. You are justifying the October 7th
The UN
attack.
was very clear. They denounced targeting civilians. They denounced targeting all types of civilians. But this time, he's denouncing targeting the Palestinian civilians in Gaza. And it's not his opinion, by the way. It's the opinion of the United Nations. Let's talk about nations.
Which is why we are having this debate.
We want to be treated as a nation.
Which is why we are having this debate, Mr. Amro. Let me quickly bring in Sushant Sareen. Sushant Sareen, what is this? What would you call this? Virtue signaling? Being an apologist for terror, justification of terror, what is this?
Pranesh, I would call it the worst kind of justification when you try and take a horrific act of terrorism and the most brutal act of terrorism, raw savagery and barbarism, rapes of, I don't know since when rapes of teenage girls has become a revolution. I don't see how that's a liberation war. I don't see how going and killing babies and beheading babies becomes a liberation war. I'm sorry, I don't subscribe to it. I can understand political differences. I can understand that there are problems and there are political problems and there is a fault which lies on all sides. But the moment you try and wash away a terrorist act by adding ifs and buts, that means you're being an apologist for terrorism. It's as plain and simple. Now, you want to go back to history? Let's go back to history. And what is your starting point of history? And then when you go back to the starting point of history, whatever your starting point of history is, let's go back to 1947-48. Who started the war? There was a UN resolution. Who started the war at that point of time? Now, you can't start a war, and when you lose a war, you make unsuccessful use of force into a claim. I'm sorry, it doesn't happen. We've seen the Pakistanis do it. They start the 65 war, they get their butts kicked, and then they want to go back to the UN. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. If you start a war, then you bloody well succeed. And look, let's be very clear, Pranesh, about one thing. What is happening right now, it is very tragic, but this was not something that Israel started, at least in this current thing. Now, you can keep talking about how many people died in the West Bank. They were not killed because, you know, somebody was going into their homes and shooting them dead in cold blood. Sorry, they have become casualties because they've been indulging in violence. It's as simple as that. What happened in Jenin a couple of months back was not because suddenly the Israelis had got some bloodlust over them and they went and they were trying to kill people, you know, randomly. It happened because there was terrorism coming from there. There were these terrorist groups present out there and they were attacking the Israelis. So a retaliation or a response to an act of terror, you cannot say that those people were innocent.
Right.
Now let's talk about the casualties in Gaza. Who's giving the numbers? And how come they're only giving the numbers of kids? I don't even think the numbers are correct. But how come nobody is talking about the numbers of Hamas guys who have been targeted? And if Hamas hides behind civilians, how is that justified? Isn't that a war crime?
Mr. Amro?
People who keep, you know, Pranesh, I'll just take half a minute.
Okay.
A lot of misuse of English language is done. Apartheid state. What was apartheid? Is Israel an apartheid state? By no stretch of imagination can it be called an apartheid state. It's a complete, you know, a complete misrepresentation of a word. Genocide. What is a genocide? Somebody please explain the dictionary meaning to me.
Genocide is what Hamas is up to in Israel.
If there is a war, can I finish? If there is a war, and this time around, Pranesh, Israel has declared war. This is not like other operations they carried out in the past. And even in that war, do expect that Israel is now going to do a ceasefire so that everybody can either run away or, you know, you literally lose the momentum? I don't think that's the way it works.
Let's put that to Mr. Amro. He's been listening to you intently. Mr. Amro, some points have been raised, but I want you to answer just these two. How would you describe Hamas, one? And is Hamas not using innocent Gazans as human shields?
And first, I want you to be a professional journalist and not to try to put in your political opinion on this kind of interviews. For your, analyst, he's saying many historical mistakes. He didn't know that 48 war was from Israel, where 300 Palestinian villages were destroyed, 800,000 Palestinians, they became refugees, and the Palestinians, they were not the ones who started the war at all. It's a big historical mistake. So I want him to really go back and study history and even independent history, or even listen to the Israelis, what they write about 1948. This is something very important. About apartheid, it's not me, it's not Isa Amro who described it as apartheid. It's Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, one of the two main human rights organizations in the world. It's
the less said, the better about Amnesty International, Mr. Amro. I don't want to interrupt your chain of thoughts, but I want to say this. Less said, the better about Amnesty International as far as its record on human rights is concerned. But you go ahead, make your point.
No. Okay, please. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to your audience. They are already biased. They are already blindfolded. So please, let me talk to the audience and not even to you. If you want me to answer, if you want me to talk in behalf of Palestinians and how Palestinians believe and what's going on.
Please go ahead.
Israel is occupying West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem according to the international law and according to all the UN resolutions. And it's really a custom in the international community that it's occupied territories. It's, Israel is going on with its settlement. They are building more and more settlements in the occupied territories, and with the new current government, which was described by many Jews in the world as a racist, fascist government because of being very and Smotrich.
Mr. Amro, is that the justification for October 7th strike? That is all that I am asking you. It's a straightforward, simple question, Mr. Amro. Does this justify the butchery by Hamas?
Let me continue. I'm not justifying. I want to tell the history and tell
Forget the history. Let's talk about what happened on October 7th. Mr. Amro, we don't have all the time in the world. Please, sir. Please, there are compulsions of format, sir. Please. You tell me what happened on October. Mr. Amro, please.
You don't want me to talk? I finished this.
No, I want you to talk, sir, but let's not go.
Let's not my narrative. Please.
Mr. Amro.
If you don't want me to talk about my narrative and describe my opinion, I will stop this interview.
No. That's not what I want. I want you to talk about October 7th strike by Hamas.
Okay, listen to me. I'm talking to you. I want you to be professional. And don't try to
listen, Mr. Amro. I don't need lessons on professionalism from you. If you're not interested in answering, taking a position on terror, I'm sorry. Thanks for your time. Mr. Amro. Daniel Kamen, Sushant Sareen. Mr. Amro, that's all that we could pack in. Thanks for watching, viewers. The United Nations, by saying that the Hamas's strike did not happen in vacuum, has actually emboldened terror apologists. Let's leave it at that.